Okay, great. We would like to welcome you to the MulSig webinar this year. And first, I guess, Martin, if you can open here.
Okay, yes. So welcome everyone to this MulSig webinar, which focuses on student-led research. We're really pleased to be able to showcase your research. I know I'm obviously Ikram's supervisor, and I think Marnie, you're a supervisor for at least someone here. So
for Alba,
for Alba. So it's great to give you the opportunity to do this and to get people sharing their research, which often I think when we come to PhD students, it's actually quite cutting edge stuff that's happening. It's because you have a bit more freedom in a way, that because you're PhD students and you can do things that are really asking questions that people haven't asked before. So it's really, really a good opportunity for us to hear about your research, and hopefully through the YouTube channel, we can share it with a wider audience as well. So if you can move on to the next slide. This is the schedule for today. We're going to start off with Alba, who's talking about how technology can be harnessed in the classroom for learners with intellectual disabilities. Ikram, as I know all too well, will be talking about the use of Kahoot as a way to manage issues with homework in EFL classes in Algeria. Piyumi is talking about dynamic assessment for second language development. Dunya is talking about instant messaging in the classroom activity for second language acquisition for younger learners. And finally, Elisa is talking about computer-mediated collaborative writing to learn Russian. So a variety of topics on display here. So I think we should just get going. So right. I'd like to,
I will stop sharing this presentation. So Alba's going to start. We're going to present in this order. Once the presentations are finished, we are going to have a few MulSig announcements, but I will stop sharing here. And then Alba, if you can share your screen.
Yeah, sure. Can you see my screen?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Perfect. So let's get started. Hi.
Can we just ask you to make it into presenter mode, please?
Yeah, no problem. Much better, right?
Perfect.
Yes.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Okay. So first of all, let me thank you all for attending this presentation. My name is Alba Buendia, and I'm a PhD student at Wikramasinghe University. And basically today, what I like to do is present you my PhD project, which aims to go towards technology-based teaching and assessment methodologies to boost foreign language acquisition in learners with intellectual disabilities. And this thesis is supervised by Dr. Marnie Colombiana and also Dr. Marnie Limanere, who is here today. So thank you for letting me present in this webinar. So for the agenda for today, I'm going to give you a brief introduction to the theoretical background of this topic. Then I'll move on to the objectives and methodology used in the different studies in this PhD project. And to wrap up this presentation, I'll discuss the expected results that we envision to have as a result of this intervention. And at the end, we will have a Q&A session, so feel free to ask any questions that you may have. Let's get started. But before entering into any theoretical discussion, here is an assumption that I want you to reflect on. English is the lingua franca. So by this, what do we mean? We mean that English is globally spread around the world. So basically, we tend to switch to English in international contexts, such as university, conferences, or even webinars like today. But my question is, do you really think that language learning, second language learning is accessible to everyone? Let me answer this question for you. No, it's not. For many reasons. But for the purpose of this presentation, second language learning is not accessible because teaching methodologies and resources are rarely adapted to students with special needs, particularly to students with intellectual disabilities. So, how we can address this issue with the current teaching methodologies and resources that we have? Let's see. So nowadays, we know that technology is key in language education. Why? Well, because researchers claim that it enhances input quality and authentic communication, it provides relevant and reliable feedback, and it improves many linguistic skills. And it may come as a surprise, but it also has benefits for students with intellectual disabilities. Why? Because, for instance, multimedia and technology have positive effects on vocabulary acquisition, and also it improves as individual factors such as confidence, excitement, courage, and motivation. So maybe technology could be the answer to the question that I have at the top of this slide. Because in language teaching, we normally know what to teach, but sometimes we have problems with knowing how to teach this, and especially in students with special needs. As for more and core methodologies, research also suggests that online language learning tools like Duolingo, Rosetta Stones, and Babel improve linguistic proficiency. They also report to have positive learning experiences in the students, and they show great adaptability to students' profiles. But there's always a but in here. As a study conducted in Spain found out that 91% of professionals claim to have problems in putting these resources into their teaching classes because they feel that they require additional training before using these resources with students with special needs. So again, we know what, we have the resources, but we don't know how to apply them. So basically, now that we have a clear picture of what the current situation is, my question before starting this PhD project was, how can I make certain language learning accessible to students with special needs, particularly to students with intellectual disabilities? So from this question, the specific objectives of this PhD project were born. Let's have a look at them. First of all, I thought I need to read a guide of the best practices to teach English to students with special needs. Once this guide is read, I need to include adapted audiovisual materials for these students. And once these two specific objectives are met, I can aim for the final goal, which is to create an English level test according to CE4 guidelines that is gonna validate that these students have mastered a certain level of English proficiency. And of course, the last objective is to make this English test accessible to the most people as possible. So how are we gonna do this? Basically, the methodology of this project is divided into two main parts. The first part is an educational intervention, and this educational intervention is gonna help us understand the learning tendencies that these students have, and also collect their feedback on the different teaching strategies and resources that we're gonna use to create this right? And then when this is achieved, we're going to use this feedback and results to raise the English proficiency test. But let's have a look at the education intervention first. So now we're already focused on this educational intervention. We have participants that are adults with mild to moderate intellectual disabilities, and these adults are involved in the special educational centers in Tarragona, Spain. The level varies between A1 and A2, and basically, since we are using core and math strategies, we need to assess their digital skills level as a control test. And basically, the intervention consists of English language sessions that work on cognitive English skills using core and math methodology. Basically, we're using Duolingo content and also external resources using computers and mobile phones. And the data collection is based on one-on-one and group interviews, adapted questionnaires, plus observations, and this is all collected in a teacher's diary. So once this educational intervention finishes, this is going to translate into a guide on suitable and accessible activities for all to other learners with special needs. And once this guide is validated, it's going to be implemented as the final methodology. Once this methodology is finally validated, this is going to be used, as I said before, to read the proficiency test in English. So we're going to take the results from this pedagogical interventions and also language assessment frameworks, such as the LT and the one by Batsman and Palmer, in order to make a robust language proficiency test that validates this student's proficiency level. So basically, the timeline of the project is, as you can see on the screen, is divided into 4 main stages. Stage 1 is the design and testing of the learning intervention and the publication of the best practice guides. Once this is done, we will follow with the creation of the audiovisual materials for the test, its implementation and testing, and final validation. Then we are going to start creating and designing the test, the level of proficiency test, and also implementing and validating the final version. And finally, the main goal is once the test is validated and assessed, we're going to disseminate it nationally and hopefully internationally. So what do we expect from this whole project intervention? Well, basically, our starting hypothesis is that core and more strategies for students with special needs are going to improve second language learning, in this case, English as a foreign language, and also as a result that the adapted methodology will lead to the creation of this accessible test, which is in line with the CFR guidelines, so these students will have a proof that they have mastered a certain level of English in order to demonstrate to the society that they have mastered some English language skills, so they can kind of boost their possibility to enter the labor market. And basically, that will be the end of the presentation. I really hope you enjoyed the topic as much as I do. And now I'll be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Right. Thank you so much. Sorry. Thank you so much for the presentation, Alba. First, I'm going to turn it over to everybody else. Does anybody here have any questions for Alba?
So I have a comment and also a question. The first thing I wanted to say, Alba, was this is a really, really fascinating and obviously a very, very worthwhile topic. As you were talking, I was thinking about my own PhD, and in my Viva, I was told that there were various areas which I hadn't covered in my literature review. I was, for example, the digital divide was one thing that I hadn't covered in enough detail. Whether or not students from poor economic backgrounds had access to technology. But one thing which I didn't cover, neither of my supervisors covered, nor my internal or external examiner covered, was accessibility of devices for students with intellectual disabilities or some kind of special needs. And I think it's an underexplored topic, and I think it's an absolutely fantastic thing that you are doing. I think you should be really, really proud of that. And my question is to ask you, where did this idea for this research come from? Did it come from your own experiences, or did it come from noticing a gap in the research?
Well, I'm a student with special needs in my age is a deficiency in motor abilities, but since I'm part of the disability community, I'm kind of always looking for gaps in education as to how to improve the presence of students with any kind of disabilities in certain language learning. And I thought that certain language learning is not accessible for students with disabilities in general, but specifically for students who have difficulties to understand content that is put in a standard ways. So basically, I think that since we're experts in certain language teaching, we need to kind of address this gap as to how to make this certain language teaching accessible to most people.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good. And does anybody else have any questions for Alba?
Maybe Elisa, me?
Yes.
No, yes, first of all, I wanted to really thank Alba for this really interesting, amazing intervention, and very useful, as Martin said. So I agree, and I just wanted to ask you where you are going to carry out your pilot study.
Yeah,
I have to do it as well, so I have troubles with coming up with my own study. So just to exchange information. So
yeah, definitely. As I was mentioning before the design of the best practice guide, we need to understand how the students with special needs behave in the second language classroom. So we're currently in the process of assessing how these students behave in this environment, what are their learning tendencies, their preferences. So we're in this stage of collecting all this feedback and observations before we do this kind of best practice guide that is gonna be the main tool to rate the proficiency test of English.
Good. Thank you.
Mm.
And does anybody else have any questions for Alba? Okay. So just before we switch to the next presenter, Alba, I have one question, and I do already know the answer to this, but I also wanted you to explain this in your own words as well. So we've talked about getting the proficiency test for persons with special needs. If you could just elaborate on why it's important. What does it mean for them if they can get a CEFR certificate showing that they're increasing their level of English? What would this mean for persons with special needs to be able to get these certificates?
Yeah, definitely. It's very important for them to have this kind of validation, official validation that these students have mastered a certain level of linguistic proficiency, because when they try to enter the labor market, one of the requirements is to have a certain level of English. But the problem is that to have this level of English, you need to take an exam. And if this exam is not adapted to you, how are you going to prove that you have this language skills? So this is the discrimination that these students are facing when they're trying to enter the labor market. So our objective is to remove this kind of ban that exists nowadays for students with special needs, in this case, intellectual disabilities, to demonstrate that they are also proof that they have mastered this certain level of English by allowing them to take an exam that is adapted to their needs, but also validated according to CFR guidelines.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alba. Thank you for sharing the presentation. Now we're going to move forward, and we've got, I believe it's Ikram Khansal from the University of Limerick is going to present next. So Ikram, if you could please share your slide with us, and as soon as you're ready, you can proceed.
The screen. Sorry, can you see the screen?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ikram Khansal, and I am a PhD student at the University of Limerick. My supervisor, Liam Murray and Martin Mullen, present here with us today. Today, I'm going to be presenting my topic entitled The Investigation of Kahoot as an Alternative to Traditional Homework Methods Used by EFL Teachers in Algeria. Today, I'm presenting a very, very colorful presentation, as you can see, and it reflects the app I'm working on currently. Now, for the agenda of today, I'm going to go over the following points. There is the context and overview of the topic. Then I will be moving on to my research questions. I will explain briefly my methodology. I will give an insight of the preliminary results, the possible contributions of my study, and finally, I will open the floor for any questions or suggestions. As an overview of my topic, and as implied by so many scholars and teachers throughout the previous years, the daily practice of foreign language through homework is considered to be an indispensable cornerstone in language learning, and it is considered by language teachers as a requirement in the language learning, also in the teaching process. Now, throughout the last decades, several characteristics of homework have been extensively analyzed. However, not much investigation has been done regarding the format of homework. That is why the existing literature has highlighted the fact that traditional homework format may also have some inconveniences that can affect not only learners, but also teachers. In recent years, and as we all know, a strong investment has been made to equip schools with technology for educational purposes, leading to some transformation in teachers' homework practices. Therefore, recent literature has tried to describe the implementation of online homework by EFL teachers using mobile learning in general and mobile apps specifically. However, I may add that research on mobile learning technologies as a support to teaching English as a foreign language is still in its early adoption worldwide, and such adoption, of course, requires several elements to be considered, including the readiness and acceptance of the teachers, which is basically an aspect of ensuring its successful implementation. That is why my topic tries to investigate the potential benefits and drawbacks of using these mobile language learning tools. In this case, I have chosen to work with the app Kahoot. in the EFL instruction context. And I'm trying to investigate the perception of these teachers regarding its use. Also, I would like to maybe focus a little bit on the impact that these tools, or in this case Kahoot, can have on teachers' instructional practices, such as its potential to enhance teachers' abilities to engage students and promote language learning outcomes. In order to do that, I'm asking the following questions. The first question would be, how do EFL teachers perceive traditional homework methods used? What are their beliefs and attitudes associated with the initial adoption of mobile language learning apps as a tool for homework? In this case, of course, it would be Kahoot as the mobile learning tool. How do these teachers perceive the present and future use of mobile language learning apps beyond the classroom as a tool for learning or for instruction? And finally, to what extent does the integration of these mobile apps can influence or change teachers' pedagogical approaches when it comes to homework? Now, as an attempt to answer the previously mentioned questions, I have adopted a mixed method approach where I have undergone 4 different stages. Now, the first stage would be a survey, an online survey. So the aim from this survey was to obtain a general overview on teachers' traditional homework practices inside and outside of the classroom, as well as their ownership and familiarity with the different technological tools in their teaching practices. The survey also, as it was basically conducted in Facebook groups, these Facebook groups contained EFL middle school teachers in Algeria. It served as a tool to recruit teachers for the upcoming stages of my research study. So teachers, after answering the survey, were invited to volunteer to take part in the next stage of my research, that is the the semi-structured interviews. Now, in the interviews, I gave a more in-depth knowledge about teachers' homework practices and technological familiarity, basically as a follow-up to the survey questions. However, I went into details, basically. Then and after the interviews, teachers were asked to, or were invited to undergo a teacher training. Now, what I did for the training is that I designed a website where I introduced the app Kahoot in general. I have also gave a step-by-step guide on how to design assignments or homework assignments via Kahoot, how do you assign those assignments to your students, and basically how to get feedback. And teachers had to do the training on their own. They had to go through the website and follow the step-by-step guide. After that, teachers were kindly asked to implement the app Kahoot with their students and try to design a number of homework assignments and then assign them to their students in order to see whether Kahoot is a successful app or not. After that, and the stage I am in right now, which is the post-interviews. So basically, the post-interviews, teachers were asked about their perception and opinion about the training, basically in general. And of course, about the implementation of Kahoot as an instructional tool. Some of the initial results I have gathered so far from both the survey and the pre-interviews, when I asked teachers how many times per week do you assign homeworks to your students, 58% of teachers said that they assign homework from 2 to 3 times per week. 38% said that it was only assigned once a week, and 4% of the teachers said that they don't assign homework at all. Now, when asked about the nature of the assignments, teachers said that the assignments were basically assignments taken from the textbooks. When interviewing a sample of the teachers, one of the teachers have answered, and I quote, "I assign homework according to the teacher's guide." So it's a book the administration give us, in which they give teachers instructions about the kind of questions and activities you assign to your students. Now, when I also ask teachers, how likely is it for your students to complete their homework assignments? Only 16% of teachers mentioned that their learners always complete their homework, which means 84% of students do not complete their homework. Now, when asked about the reason why, 65% of teachers have mentioned that students are simply not interested. Some of the teachers also in the interview mentioned other reasons. One of the reasons is, and I quote, "They give more importance to other subjects such as math and physics and ignore English homework." So teachers have complained about the overload of homework that students have during their basically day. So they wouldn't give any importance to English or to homework given by English teachers. Now, when I asked teachers personally about their homework practices and how often do they check and correct homework activities they assign their students, of course, 62% of teachers said that they correct homework whenever they assign it, and only 38% of them, still a big amount, said that they think it's too time consuming. However, and in contradiction with that, and when I interviewed the teachers, almost 70% of them said that they do not correct homework, they do not check it, simply because it's too time consuming, and they've also complained about the heavy workload as well as the large number of students within the classroom. Some of the quotations I've mentioned here were from the teachers. One of them said, "We're limited by time. I mean, we have just 1 hour to assess the homework and present the lesson." Another one said, "With the large class number, it would be impossible to go through all assignments of all students, basically." As possible contributions or as possible suggestions of this study, first of all, my study, I hope it would contribute in the development of new pedagogical practices in the Algerian EFL context, as the use of these tools maybe could provide a new insight into how to design more effective and engaging language learning tasks. It can also contribute in the professional development of language teachers, again, in the Algerian EFL context, by providing them with new insights into effective teaching and how to use technology inside, also outside of the classroom. And finally, the study can promote the inclusion of online mobile language learning tools as a training that could be later on added to the curriculum. And this could be, why not, the new era of online training in general. Finally, this is a list of the references I have used in this presentation. Thank you very much for listening, and if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Ikram, and I will open the floor to anyone who might have any questions for you before I ask my own.
Okay, I've got a question, and first, Ikram, I think this is an amazing thesis topic. I think it would help the students to really get engaged. My question is, because you've put together a website, which is a guide for the the teachers to go and do the training. And you're leaving it up for them to take the initiative to get the training done. Is there any way that you can monitor to see that they're actually doing the training? Like, do they sign into the website and you could see the time on site? Or are they giving you feedback as to how long they've been working on this?
Actually, for the training, teachers are voluntarily asked to do the training. So I gave an open floor to teachers to whether do the training or not, to see, because for like both answers would be beneficial to my study. So I wasn't gonna force anyone to do the training, and then whether they did the training, that would be good for my study, whether or not that would also be good for my study, to be honest. So I gave them the option to do the training or not, and hopefully, I think so far most of them has done the training. So yeah.
Okay, good. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Okay, so I'm just going to ask mine. One of your preliminary results 3, you mentioned that there appears to be more of an interest or an emphasis on maths and physics rather than English. It's quite interesting for me. It's not something that we've talked about before in our meetings. And because obviously one of the reasons that you are a student at the University of Limerick is because the Algerian Ministry of Education has decided to send its elite students such as you to the English-speaking world rather than the French-speaking world, a big change in their education policy. Is this something that has always been the case in Algeria, or is language becoming less important in comparison to things like STEM subjects, for example?
Well, if we're talking about middle school students, so here the context is middle school students in Algeria, we're saying the BM exam, that is the final exam of the middle school period. So students have to go through an exam. The exam will basically determine whether you go for the scientific branch or the literary branch. Now, when students are studying in the middle school, they have 4 essential subjects, which are Arabic, French, math, and science. So students pay much attention to these subjects because these are the subjects that are gonna guarantee their shift from middle school to high school, basically. So they would consider subjects such as English, I don't know, music, like subjects like that, they would consider them as secondary subjects. So they wouldn't actually give much importance to the scores they would get from these, like from the exams from these subjects. That would be, I think, in my point, the reason why.
Would you say that that's something which the teachers themselves are aware of? Is that something that kind of different,
I think
demotivational
even,
for them?
Yeah, I think even teachers among themselves are aware of, my subject is more important than your subject, kind of topic. So yeah, so I think it's very common, and it's very usual for English teachers to think that, okay, I'm not gonna give them a really hard exam because my subject is just there to help them enhance their marks, and not to give them access or to give them bonus to go to the next level, which is high school. I think that differs when it goes to high school, because in high school, for example, as I said, there are 2 branches, actually three branches. So there's math, science, and then there's the literary, which is basically all languages, English, Arabic, French, Italian, German, and so on and so forth. When it's in high school and you're studying in the literary branch, English becomes the first subject, or the subject with the higher notes. Yeah, basically.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Are there any other questions?
Yes,
Elisa.
just one question, because it was really interesting. really very interesting. And I'm a teacher and of Russian, and I use sometimes Kahoot, so it's really interesting to me. I just wanted to ask you, you said at the end of your presentation that you hope, of course, that your project might benefit the Algerian approach, to SL teaching and learning. So I just wanted to ask you, so it's just curiosity, out of curiosity, how you think you could implement your intervention, maybe your training. Yeah, I don't know.
You mean within the Algerian context?
Yeah.
Well, I'm hoping that the training hopefully goes well and opens the floor to the idea that online training is an option, and to be more specified, online autonomous training. So if teachers, I'm very much aware, because as Martin already knows, my own mom is a teacher in middle school, and I know how heavy the workload can be for those teachers and how many hours they work per day, plus the training they have to go through every trimester or every semester. So it would be a shift if, for example, online trainings could be a thing, and teachers wouldn't have to put much effort into going to places and, taking the time to do a lot of trainings. That could be very accessible and very easy for them to just sit by their computers and, go through steps, and that's it. And they can actually implement that in their teaching practices.
Of course. Yeah, I agree. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you very much, Ikram, and lovely presentation as well. It's been a while since I saw a Prezi. We're also used to
I know.
PowerPoint. Yeah, well done. So we're going to move on, and I'd like to introduce Piyumi, who is going to talk about text chat mediated dynamic assessment for second language development.
Give me 1 minute, please.
Yeah, take your time. It's okay. Yes, that's it. You're sharing full screen now. Whenever you're ready, go ahead.
Yes. So I'm Piyumi Wikramasinghe from Stockholm University, Sweden. And my supervisors are Professor Ola Knudsen and Professor Sirku. So my project is about text chat mediated dynamic assessment, a 3-step regulatory scale for second language development. So this would be my outline of the study. Then I think it's important for me to mention the motivation for this study as well, like why it was motivating for me to do this sort of a study. It is actually a long-standing question in second language acquisition research as to how this corrective feedback should be given in an appropriate manner so that the learners would notice their errors and reach self-regulation. So that is a motivation, and also, like my teaching experience in the university context, that motivated me to do this research, because I've seen the students struggling with the language, and also even if we give corrective feedback to them, they would not seem to take it in, and they would repeat the same error again and again. So that was another motivation for me. So these were my research questions. The first one, what is the potential of initiating text chat as a mediating tool to provide teachers feedback to enhance the language development of adult learners of English as a second language? And then how could a DA-based regulatory scale be designed to promote language learning in the ESL classroom with the support of text chat as a mediating tool? So my study actually is a collection of 4 sub-studies, and those are the 4, I have given here those 4 studies. And it's a bit challenging to give all the details within 15 minutes, but I will try my best. So I think I should make a note of the context as well, because this study was conducted in Sri Lanka. So to talk about the language politics and the position of English language in Sri Lanka, Sri Lanka is a post-colonial country. It's a former British colony in South Asia. So to talk about the role of English, it is actually, it has a quite, it is a quite contentious issue because now in Sri Lanka, ESL learners have this love-hate relationship towards English. They love the language because they want to achieve the status in the society, because if you can speak English well, then you're considered as a representative of the higher class. So English has become a class marker. And so because of this reason, students love to learn the language, but at the same time, they hate the language when they realize the gap between them and the upper social class. And because this is a class marker, and also they realize that it's so difficult for them to reach that status, they begin to hate the language. So in this context, in Sri Lanka, actually nowadays, at the moment, in Sri Lanka, English is considered as a linked language, meaning like this is a linked language among the different ethnicities. But then in Sri Lanka, in the higher education system, English is used as the medium of education as well. Then the theory I'm using for this study is the socio-cultural theory. Why I'm using this? Because this theory claims that learning is not independent, but mediated and cannot be separated from the context in which it is carried out. And also, this is not a theory which is about social and cultural aspects, but this is a theory of the mind. I'm sorry, here it's raining, and because of that, the power issues are there. Okay. So sociocultural theory is a theory of mind. So simply, it's a theory of mediated mental development. So as Vygotsky says, development occurs when it is mediated with the cultural and social aspects. So you need the external and internal mediation. And in sociocultural theory, communicative activity plays a central role. And also this theory promotes praxis orientation through collaborations between researchers and teachers. This theory promotes collaboration. So because of these reasons, I use this theory, sociocultural theory. And when talking about corrective feedback, I think we have to look at corrective feedback through the lens of sociocultural theory. According to this theory, learning is a process, and the focus should not be given to the end product, but to the learning process. So if you take the other corrective feedback strategies, I think what's happening is that you focus on the end product, but development occurs in this process. So we have to focus on the learning process. And also development means moving from other regulation to self-regulation. And also development is not only about performance, but it's also about the responsibility you take and the control you take of your language. Then these are the tenets that I'm using of this sociocultural theory, mediation and zone of proximal development. So here, mediation, to give the definition to mediation, that is involvement of a third factor in the interaction between two objects, events, or persons. So the mediating tools I'm using in this study are text chat and DA-based, that means dynamic assessment-based regulatory scale. And this is about the zone of proximal development. To give you the definition to it, zone of proximal development means the distance between the actual performance and the potential performance. So, what it means is actually you should not just look at the actual performance, like you have to see how the students could perform with assistance. So under zone of proximal development, we have this dynamic assessment, and this was not used by Vygotsky in his writings, but the name has not been used by Vygotsky, but by his colleagues. So anyway, dynamic assessment means the combination of both instruction and assessment. So in this study, to talk about the difference between this static assessment and dynamic assessment. In dynamic assessment, it is not only evaluating the actual performance of the learner, but the teacher is assessing the potential development as well. And in this study, I'm not using dynamic assessment as a testing or evaluation tool, but this is used to promote development. And when you talk about dynamic assessment, there are two approaches. Interventionist, that means you have the predefined scale. And using this, teachers can cater to a large audience as well, because it's more systematic, and you have the scale and you can use the scale to cater to a lot of students. And also there's this approach called interactionist approach, where teacher is more interactive, and the teacher is not using any scale, but you're giving prompts or giving feedback according to the linguistic needs of the students. And in this study, I'm using a blend of both interactionist and interventionist approaches, because I'm using a scale, and at the same time I'm using the teacher as a mediator, so that the teacher can check the language abilities of the students and then provide the feedback according to the scale. So these are my main studies. In the first study, I wanted to explore the potential of implementing text chat mediated corrective feedback, or as computer mediated corrective feedback in the ESA classroom. So I interviewed teachers and students, and then I analyzed this data using affinity diagram. And I found out that both teachers and students really like to have some innovative teaching practices in the class. For example, teachers mentioned that they're looking for a teaching method, a better corrective feedback strategy that they could use, so that the learners notice their errors and then they correct their errors. And also the students mentioned that they would like to use technology in the classroom, and text chat is something trendy among them, and that is one of the main communication means among the young people. So they would love to chat with teachers, because they think that would create a more friendly learning environment. So those are the findings of the first study. Then for the second study, we came up with this scale, regulatory scale. This was adapted from Al-Jafri and Lantolf 1994 study. They have introduced 13-step scale, but that was introduced for oral feedback. So this is written feedback, because this is happening in the text chat platform. So just to see how could a DA-based regulatory scale be designed to promote language learning in the text chat environment. So we used 3 stages. In the first stage, that was the exploratory stage, where the teachers were allowed to use whatever the feedback that they wanted to use. And then in the stage 2, we used the adapted scale, where we had 5 steps. And to tell you about this scale, these are the steps. So in the first step, if the learner's sentence is erroneous, then teacher would repeat the sentence saying something like, can you check this sentence again? And then if the learner cannot correct it, then again, teacher has to narrow down the location of the error. Then if the learner is not correcting the error, again, then the teacher has to indicate the nature of the error. And still the student fails, and then the teacher has to provide clues. And still, if the learner cannot come up with the correct answer, then the teacher has to provide the correct form with explanations. So this was implemented in the second stage. So after this, we interviewed teachers and learners. And then we found out that, the teachers were saying that this is good, but it was such a tedious process. It was frustrating because that had too many steps. And if the student doesn't get the right answer after several steps, then it is so frustrating. And even the students gave the same comment, so that after this, we had workshops with teachers, and we came up with a new scale that is a 3-step scale. So there we have only 3 steps. First one is to narrow down the location of the error and to indicate the nature of the error. Then if the learner cannot get the right answer, then the teacher would provide clues. Then still, if the student fails, then the teacher would provide the correct form with explanations. And this is the 3-step regulatory scale that we introduced. The same thing. So the main finding was that this was useful in the classroom, and both students and teachers were saying that it is better, it is easier, and that could improve their learning. And also the teachers noticed that the students were improving and the self-regulation was noticed. So after that, I mean, after we found out that it was useful in the ESA classroom, we wanted to see the learner responsiveness, because when it comes to dynamic assessment, this mediation and learner reciprocity, or as learner responsiveness, those are like the two sides of the same coin. So mediation as well as reciprocity are very important, because otherwise teachers cannot diagnose the learner development. So to see like how could a DA-based 3-step regulatory scale promote learner reciprocity in a dialogic interaction between teachers and learners in textured environment, that was a research question. And then the findings were, we found out that the learners were responding to the teachers mainly in 5 ways. First, incorporating the mediator's feedback. If not, they would provide a correct response following the mediator's feedback, or else they would imitate the mediator when the mediator gives the correct form, then seeking mediator's approval, then accepting and acknowledging the mediation. And these were actually, some of these were there in the previous literature also. So these findings of this study confirms the previous findings. And also, this study found out that the mediation could be accepted or acknowledged by the learners in several ways. So those were verbal acceptance of mediation, non-verbal acceptance of mediation, that means using emojis, then displaying gratitude for mediation. Maybe it's because of the cultural context, and then being apologetic about the error. So that also, I believe it is because the cultural context. So these were several ways that the learners would use to acknowledge and accept the mediation. And after getting the results, then we thought, okay, now the dynamic assessment, the DA-based regulatory scale was, this is useful, but then can we use this in the real ESL classroom? So we wanted to implement this study in a real classroom, and we integrated this particular model to an existing class where they had 25 students and 2 teachers. So this is like the visual representation of the classroom. You can see here 2 teachers are there, and 1 teacher is handling 3 groups at the same time. And in one group, they are supposed to talk to each other and then talk to the teacher, the communication, like 2-way communication. And I think I forgot to mention like what sort of activities are used in this this scenario. Dictogloss activities were used, where the teachers have to tell a story, and then the students have to listen to it, and then they have to retell the story through the text chat platform in their own words, so that they were asked to write the story sentence by sentence so that the teachers can give the feedback. The data collection, like we use the text chat transcripts and also the students' oral conversations, and we analyze this using conversation analysis. And the findings were that we found out that teachers are using several strategies when they are using 3-step regulatory scale. Now, they sometimes use each step of the scale repeatedly, and sometimes they use the scale without any change, and sometimes they would go back and forth in the same scale, and then they would skip step 2 of the scale. So as I mentioned earlier, this is a blend of both interactionist and interventionist approaches. So they have the scale, but they also have the flexibility to look at the language abilities of the students and to provide the assistance contingently. So, and also we found out that DA could be used in the ESL classroom in the form of collaborative GDA. So here, if you look at this, here, the teacher mediation and also peer mediation is there. So they are like peer feedback is also there. So likewise, we can have the collaborative group dynamic assessment. And also mediation and reciprocity moves occur even among peers. That was another finding. And use of text chat features as mediational and reciprocity moves. Now that is like illustrated here. Now using these emojis were used as the mediational moves and also as the reciprocity moves. Then to talk about the contributions, I think this study can contribute to the call research because this suggests, you know, a way that we can use Zoom effectively in the ESL classroom to promote language development. And also this contributes to the DA-based discussions that means dynamic assessment-based discussions in call research. And also this suggests a conducive platform for emotional scaffolding. And also this suggests a comfortable learning platform for learning, to promote language development. And then how it could contribute to the SCT research, to the theory. It contributes to the learning and instructional theories such as ZPD, mediation, and dynamic assessment. And it strengthens sociocultural perspective to discuss feedback, because feedback has been discussed in using other theories like interactional theories, but here we talk about feedback through sociocultural theory. And then also it confirms Vygotsky's claim of the evolutionary and revolutionary nature of development, like the development is not always progressive, it can also be regressive sometimes, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't go for development, it can ultimately reach development. Then also it supports Vygotsky's argument that development could not be gained merely by maturation and interactions with the environment, but it needs some form of external and intentional mediation. So we use the regulatory scale for the mediation here. And it also contributes to the scarce literature on learner reciprocity, because there's few research on learner reciprocity. Then it contributes to the literature on DA approaches by introducing a 3-step scale that uses both interactionist and interventionist approaches. Then also it introduces a collaborative group dynamic assessment, this approach. And also it confirms the ability to use microgenetic analysis to capture the development in dialogic interactions, and also the feasibility of applying the microgenetic method in L2 research, especially when you have to check the nuances of development. We use conversational analysis to check the nuances of development. And also to talk about the contributions to methodology, it confirms the feasibility of using affinity diagrams in second language learning, and also the possibility of employing qualitative methodology in DPR, this design-based research. Because I think database research take most of the time mixed approaches, but here this is a qualitative study. So to talk about the contributions to the pedagogy, we introduced this DA-based 3 steps regulatory scale. And at the same time, I should emphasize on the fact that we are not saying that this has to replace all the other teaching activities in the ESL classroom, but this is an additional activity that could promote the language, and especially if the students have this high language anxiety, because we are using the text chat platform. And also this talks about this suggests the usefulness of employing activity like dictogloss activity in the classroom, and also suggests an interactive tool to be used in the ESL classroom. And then about limitations, I think this study findings cannot be generalized, especially this is a qualitative research and this happened in Sri Lankan context. Then also the small sample size. Now, if you talk about the 4th study, we had only 25 students, and maybe like the future research is needed to talk about like how this collaborative group dynamic assessment, this could be implemented in a larger class, whether it is possible. And also we had challenges due to the COVID-19 pandemic, because especially the 4th study, we had to do this during that period. And then some students were in the campus and some students were joining from home. So we had certain network issues, and also those were certain challenges that we had to come through. So that's about my presentation, and I have published 2 papers on this study. So this is the second one is about the perspectives of teachers and students about the possibility of implementing this sort of a thing in this context. And then this first study that introduces the regulatory scale that I talked about. So I would like you to read these papers as well. And if you have any comments, then you can give me. And actually, I'm done with the study now. So I really appreciate your comments, because that will be so helpful for me in future when I have to do the future presentations. Thank you so much.
Good. Thank you, Piyumi. Thank you for sharing your presentation with us. This was a lot of work. I know you've almost completed your doctorate. So congratulations in advance. And you've really tried to get a lot of that information into the presentation today. I do have some questions for you, but I'm going to open it up to everybody else first. So does anybody here have any questions for Piyumi?
Yes. First of all, thank you. I mean, really lots of work and very interesting. And you mentioned the dictogloss.
Sorry?
You mentioned the dictogloss.
Yes, dictogloss.
Because
Yeah.
it's something that when I am going to present myself, you will see I'm going also to use the dictogloss in my research. So I didn't really understand how you implemented the dictogloss in your research, because you said that the students had to rewrite the text in chat text, sentence by sentence, but I didn't really understand the procedure.
Okay, sorry for that, because I actually had to say a lot of things.
Of course, yeah, of course, but
yeah.
Yeah,
So this
but
is how I did. Yes. In all these studies, I mean, like I have in the second study, the third study, and the fourth study, in all these studies, I used dictogloss activity. So I used a small story, and that was taken from previous studies. I mean, several stories. So the teacher, now before they started the text chat session, now for example, in the fourth study, that was the classroom session, right? 25 students were there and 2 teachers were there. So one student is reading the story to the whole class 3 times, and then the learners are supposed to listen to it and remember, and then they have to retell the story through the text chat platform. So for that, they use Zoom chat platform. That is like the separate one, not the form that we have in these meetings. There's a separate Zoom chat platform. So they were using that. So they had to retell the story in their own words. So now, like if they told the whole story at once, then it is difficult for the teachers to give them corrective feedback. So because of that, we asked the students to give the story sentence by sentence. So when they send the first sentence, the teacher has to reply to it, and the students have to wait until they get the feedback. Then if that sentence is not correct, then the teacher is asking them to correct, and until they correct the first sentence, they cannot go to the second sentence.
Okay.
Now that is how we did it.
So
Yeah.
you a little bit changed the procedure, I mean, maybe. Yeah.
Adapted to the text chat platform.
Okay, but so your students were, present in the classroom. They were working there, and then they were working on their mobile devices with chat platform, or on computers, or maybe tablets.
Yeah, this happened in the computer lab. So the students were sitting in groups, and the 2 teachers were there. So in the groups, students they were talking to each other. They decided on the sentence, and then they sent it through Zoom that was on the screen, computer screen.
Okay.
So they were not using the text, the mobile phones, because it was easier for the whole group to look at the screen. So that's why we use computer
screen. So they had one computer for each group.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And again, sorry, another question. And did you provide a training before
Yes, I provided a training, yes. Before each stage, the teachers were given the training. And also this Zoom platform was not very new to them because, I mean, they were using Zoom platform for their educational purpose. They were doing online lectures and all. So even the students were familiar with that, but especially this scale, how to use this scale, on that, everybody, I mean, the teachers were given a workshop.
Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Thank you for your
Good.
question.
And any other questions for Piyumi?
No, Elisa asked the question that I was going to ask about
Okay.
the devices that were used. So thank you.
Okay. Piyumi, I noticed throughout I had some questions, but as you were talking, you were answering all of the questions. So I did have quite a few there. Now, I'm just curious because I'm not sure if I understand this correctly. With the chat conversations, were the students chatting only with the teacher, or were they chatting with each other?
Okay. What happened was, now, for example, I'll take the fourth study. They were sitting in a group and they were talking to each other orally because they like that was a face-to-face conversation.
Right.
And they were chatting with the teacher.
Okay.
But as I mentioned, I told you like there were certain challenges because some students were joining from home.
Right.
That case, what happened was like some students were here and the other students were at home and they were connecting with Zoom meeting.
Right.
Again, oral conversation, but they are communicating with the teacher through text chat.
Okay. Because one of the things that I wasn't quite sure of is if they were talking with each other, and they were able to correct each other, were they starting to mimic the steps that the teachers were following? So if the teacher was then first asking, well, do you want to look at this again? Were they then using that same method that they were seeing the teachers use to give peer corrective feedback? But I'm not sure if you were able to observe that.
Yeah, that was their money. And in my papers, actually, I have detailed out all those things.
Okay.
So that's why I said that the peer mediation was also there. So they were discussing with each other what is the wrong thing, and one person would come up with the right answer, and then the other person would come up with something else, and then they talk with each other and they try to sort it out, and then that mediation was there. So yeah.
Because then there's that element of collaborative learning at the same time.
Yes.
Good. And I'll just open it up one last time if there's any further questions for Piyumi.
Rather, not a question, but I would like, Piyumi, can you go back to your first slide? I am taking screenshots of each slide to put them up onto Twitter. So can you go back to your title slide, please? I didn't do it in time. So can you just go back to the very first slide? Yeah, thank you. And just give me just a couple of seconds to everyone make a big smile. And I will be able to. Okay, that's great. Thank you. I can share this on Twitter and Facebook later. Thank you, Piyumi.
Good. Thank you so much, Piyumi. You can stop sharing.
Excuse me, can I just ask another question to use their time? Just Piyumi, because the dictogloss really interests me because of my research. And how did you, did the students, were the students acquainted with this kind of task already before your intervention, or did they know already this task?
Okay, that is not something I checked, but then I think in the ESL classrooms, the teachers are using these dictogloss activities. And that is not something I checked. Do you think like it's something that we have to check in the study?
Well, no, maybe not in case, as you said, probably not in the case of SL, but I think in my case in Russian, yes, because I don't think it's something that it's really spread, especially in Italy, for example, or in Spain, where I have to do my experiment.
Yeah.
This is a special case with Russian.
Yeah, that is something I missed actually. That's a good point. It would be better if we train the students to do this dictogloss activities.
My case, for sure, because I'm quite sure they are not really used to. But then I will talk about my topic. So I don't want to waste your time now.
But thank you for the comment. Yes.
Okay. Thank you again, Piyumi. So we can have you stop sharing now. And we're going to introduce Dunya Martinez Fortuny with the Open University of Catalonia. And she'll be talking about mobile instant messaging to support classroom activities. So Dunya, if you can share your screen.
Yes, I'm going to share. Give me a sec. Let me see. Can you see my, yep, hang on. I need to do something. Okay. Hang on. Can you see my screen?
Looks like it's loading.
Yeah, I think it's just
Yeah,
loading now.
now we can see it. Perfect.
Can you? Okay, that's fantastic. So thank you. Okay, so well, my name is Dunya, and today I'm going to present what I've been doing so far about my PhD research, which is about mobile instant messaging, MIM, as a support for classroom activities in second language acquisition with teenagers and young adults, right? So these are the contents we'll be looking at today. I'll try to be as brief as possible because there's a lot to say, right? So very, very briefly, young people tend to move away from in-person interaction to multimodal communication on smartphones, for example, videos, memes, stickers, and such, which implies that they choose mobile instant messaging as their primary means of communication. And with the 91% of internet users aged 16 to 64, WhatsApp is the most used social media platform in Spain. And although young people use MIM primarily to communicate, we lack a comprehensive understanding of how MIM applications are used for teaching and learning, right? And here I have included this quote by David Warlick, which I think summarizes very well that we need technology in every classroom and in every student and teacher's hand, because it's the pen and paper of our time, and it's the lens through which we experience much of our world. So constructivism, oops, no, you see, I knew I was going forward. Constructivism is a learning theory that emphasizes the active role of learners in constructing knowledge and understanding through interactions with their environment. And mobile instant messaging can facilitate constructivist learning by allowing learners to collaborate, share ideas, engage in discussions, and share multimedia content. According to Bowden et al., the 4 dimensions of engagement in education are social, emotional, cognitive, and behavioral. And these 4 dimensions are important for promoting effective learning and development among students. And the more we grasp commitment, the more we can engage our learners while planning assignments for them. Consequently, if we understand engagement better, we can engage learners more easily when preparing tasks for them and in order for them to be more effective, right? But we must not forget that when it comes to adolescents learning English or whatever, right? Teachers should consider their cognitive development, social factors, peer influence, motivation, language proficiency, technology use, and cultural backgrounds to create an engaging learning environment. So it is, I would add that it's essential to consider the interactive resources used by teenagers outside the classroom and recognize the knowledge and skills they can acquire by evaluating whether they can integrate these knowledge and those skills into academic contexts. So at the moment of conducting this research, not many studies were performed among teenagers and young adults, probably because the use of mobile phones is not allowed in the classroom, right? Most of the studies we found were performed in university or adult learning environments. So still, statistics show that there's been a rise in the numbers of people aged 13 to 18 who own and use a smartphone. And WhatsApp is the most common and popular application amongst them. But again, practice and analysis remained at a distance. So The focus in this study is on how MIM, focusing mainly on in WhatsApp, can be used as a support for various teaching and classroom tasks, collaborative work, for individual work, for the implementation of student-oriented learning, and shape and express personal opinion on topical issues, right? And several exploratory questions will guide data collection and analysis. So the main question is, how does MIM, especially WhatsApp, provide appropriate support, especially pedagogical, to the EFL teenager and young adult students using it? And then the following questions will be explored. What's the pedagogical value of MIM for teenage and young adult students when learning English as a foreign language? Do students engage more in the process of learning a foreign language when using a MIM app? And then we'll ask about students' perceptions when using MIM for classroom activities, group and pair work, individual work, and how do students interact with MIM as a learning tool, right? So as for methodology, right, I would like to quote this, I would like to quote Becker, right? If you want to understand something, you have to change it. And if you want to change something, you have to understand it, right? Which is the basics of it. Reeves develops a model for design analysis, which he contrasts with a predictive approach to research. This predictive approach involves collecting data and using statistical methods to make predictions about future events and behaviors. But the approach to design research starts with evaluating a problem by both researchers and practitioners who collaboratively create a solution-driven design principle and technological affordances. So throughout the practice, there's an iterative cycle, an iterative test cycle that culminates in a loop back to the early phases of the problem and creation, improving the methodology and the design principles used along the way. So this means that there's a continuous review cycle to maximize the solution implementation. And the entire model goes back to its early stages and is, because it's an iterative process. So summarizing, design-based research is an iterative, collaborative, and systematic approach to educational research that aims to address complex educational problems through the development, implementation, and evaluation of educational intervention, right? And of course, in DVR, the researcher works closely with teachers, students, and other stakeholders to design and test these innovative educational interventions, right? So while there are several conceptual models of DVR approaches, Reeves' four-phase of DVR model was chosen for this research. And based on the findings from the first two phases, we subsequently set up the initial learning activities and tasks, right? And different tasks using WhatsApp were designed and used to supplement these face-to-face sessions. And throughout these initial cycles of designing and redesigning the authentic learning activities, this researcher went back to the literature, looking for clarity and attempted to develop solutions for the reconceptualization of the tasks, but always within the parameters of, within the parameters of the chosen theoretical framework, right? In order to carry out this study, students aged between 13 and 18 were observed and tested in the language school I own, which is on the outskirts of Barcelona. These students are all studying English as a foreign language as an extracurricular activity outside school and are bilingual in Catalan and Spanish. Students meet twice a week for 1.5 hour sessions, making a total of 3 hours per week. And the teacher is part of the WhatsApp group. And all students understand that their participation in this study is voluntary and will not affect their grades. Students are kept informed of this research process, both verbally and in writing. Of course, their parents as well, because they're minors. and by means of an informed consent. And no coercion is used in eliciting these responses. So questionnaires to the participants were delivered in order to understand their perception and analyze their level of engagement and motivation related to the tasks they've been doing using WhatsApp. In phase 2 and 3, at the end of each academic course, focus groups were conducted where students could freely share their feelings and opinions about different activities and use of WhatsApp. And then the transcripts were analyzed using thematic analysis, and participant observation of students' performance and interaction when using WhatsApp took place. And the scripts of the WhatsApp messages were analyzed using simple in vivo coding techniques, which are linked to codes using the software Atlas TI. And then WhatsApp Analyzer is also used to analyze the interaction and social engagement of students. As for the results so far, this is a summary of the different phases. Now I'm in phase 4, right? So please don't ask me about this phase. Right? So phase 1 took place, that's the analysis during course 2019-2020, phase 2, course 2020-2021, and currently phase 3 is about to finish, June. Finished last course, and currently phase 4, right, which is on a working process, like I said. And as you can see, it's like an iterative process, and it's an ongoing process all the time, questionnaires, right? Moving on. I'm going to go phase by phase now. Okay, so as for phase 1, the analysis of practical problems, students were provided with a pre-questionnaire and a post-questionnaire, of course, and students reported in the pre-questionnaire that they would find WhatsApp useful for reminders and observations, right? But the post-questionnaire findings reveal that interaction with others and the knowledge exchange were aspects that they enjoyed the most. So these discrepancies between the expectations of students before and after taking part in the WhatsApp activities indicate that the implementation of new activities should not be restricted to what the students may suggest in pre-questionnaires. WhatsApp most popular uses found in this study were links to fun activities and the immediate access to responses to their doubts, grammar, deadlines, homework, among others, right? So it's not surprising, as participants are used to using WhatsApp in general, and they used to sharing expressions through memes and stickers and immediate interaction with others, right? The researchers and teacher, right, is the same person, right? Designed different activities and tasks to work in the WhatsApp groups, taking into consideration the results of this preliminary study. And these activities were sought to work on the 4 skills: reading, speaking, writing, and listening, right? The results were presented in a short paper called Hook to WhatsApp. Can we take advantage of it? The Eurocall 2020 conference, right? Which took place in August. So if you want to read further information, it can be found there. Now, as for phase 2, which is the development of solutions, we provided students with different tasks to do via WhatsApp in order to work, again, the 4 skills: speaking, individual and in pairs, writing collaboratively and individually, listening and reading, right? We based our activities on an article called Special Designed Activities for Learning English Language Through the Application of WhatsApp by Sayed. You will find in references, right, the full reference. Okay, and students were delivered questionnaires about the different tasks using Likert scales and open questions, so they would be free to answer, right? Also, chats were observed, were analyzed, the number of interactions, what was the most popular day of the week for texting, the number of emojis they used, in order to analyze all the for example, social and emotional engagement, and the number of messages sent per user, so on and so forth. And in addition, at the end of the course, a focus group was conducted. And the results in general showed that behavioral, emotional, and social and cognitive engagement can be seen as a meta construct and overlap when using WhatsApp. Students actively participated in tasks. They were very interested in the task. They made an effort to prepare and do the tasks, but felt ashamed to be the first ones to do the tasks or even record their voices and share their speaking tasks in the general group chats. They just send it via private message to the teacher directly, right? So as for phase 2, the results were presented in a Eurocall conference, an analysis of second language learners' engagement in the context of MIM, right? And in addition, the different tasks implemented were presented in the ELT convention, which is pretty popular here in Spain. Right, phase 3. Another iteration taking into account the results. We gathered, again, focus groups, questionnaires, transcripts of WhatsApp chats were, again, the 3 main sources from which data was gathered. We retrieved the group members' interaction records. Again, we used inductive thematic analysis to examine this, right? And again, students actively participated in tasks. They were very interested, felt ashamed to do to be the first ones to start. To prevent that, the teacher in this phase provided with an example of what was expected. So it was the teacher, the first one to start the task, and then eventually they started. And again, speaking was an issue when it had to be sent to the general group chat. Initially, the WhatsApp group was used mainly for fluency practice, but later became a platform for real communication where learners actually interacted with each other and the teacher. You can guess here, user 6 is the teacher, right? They asked for help and guidance and engaged in playful exchanges. And the unique features of WhatsApp helped to increase social engagement, especially because we were COVID period. So WhatsApp was really, really useful, I must add, right? The most successful tasks were those in which learners shared personal information or experiences, right? But there was a decline in participation with each successive activity, suggesting an attrition effect. The observation records indicated that students interacted with each other a lot, right? And these interactions were not always focused on the task. Sometimes they were off task. So this means that WhatsApp provided all students, including those who did not fully participate, with opportunities for communicating in any way as well as learning, right? And again, focus group was conducted, and the results indicated that the WhatsApp group helped students create a sense of group and connectivity and improved awareness of peer presence. The teacher's participation in the group and her attempts to use this app in an academic setting was also well received by students, and they did not see the teacher as an intruder. Right? As for phase 3 results, in August 2022, a paper called Emotional and Social Engagement of Teenager and Young Adult Students in EFL Using MIM was presented in the Eurocall conference. Again, these researchers participated in the APAC meeting and the ICOP L2 conference, where the different tasks implemented in phase 3 were presented, as well as the results, right? And these are the timelines I've included of all the work, just in case you were interested. This is a summary, right? The publications, I've got some pending approvals there, right? And some others. And these are the references. So this is basically, if you have questions, I'll be very happy to answer.
Okay, thank you so much, Dunya. This is a topic which is very close to my own heart. So I have plenty of questions, but before I ask, I'll open the floor to anyone else who has any questions for you.
Well, I've got a question, Dunya. First of all, thank you so much for the presentation. I enjoyed watching it. It's interesting for me because I moved to Spain from Canada and WhatsApp isn't really used in Canada. Additionally, we don't really use emojis that much. So when I moved to Spain, learning how to use WhatsApp, it was new to me. But also the use of emojis through WhatsApp was very different. And getting into the WhatsApp group where, one of the things that was really interesting is that, people were signing off with kisses.
Yep.
And so I had to explain to my husband, I'm like, no, it's not a romantic thing. They're not sending me kisses. Like they're saying hi and bye. So it can be very much a cultural thing, but I also find it is with emojis as well. Were the students in your studies permitted to use emojis? And did that change the way that they corresponded with the actual text?
Yes, yeah, definitely. The idea is that there were no constraints in the WhatsApp use. It was voluntary, and I told them actually to be using it as they wished, and that's what happened at the beginning. In phase one, they were all like, oh, this is tasks and they asked a lot, do we have to do it? Is it compulsory? And I was like, no, don't worry, feel free. Eventually, they got the hint of it, and they started using emojis naturally. Happy birthday, Merry Christmas. It was like, yeah, very, very interesting. Yeah, no problem. It's
okay.
Eventually we are still using it. And they use it as if it was, something they would be doing with another group.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So they're still permitted to use the emojis. So the conversation is taking that really natural form here.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's the idea, to see if a natural use of WhatsApp, because so far all the studies I found, at least, are related, to university students, adults, which may have another idea of this use of WhatsApp. Teenagers, when they feel it's a task, the answers were, well, I found no difference. I could be doing this in my book.
Right.
So the idea was to change tasks in a way that they feel more like a conversation,
right,
rather than a task.
Okay.
So yeah, eventually it seems it happens, because yesterday one of the students here in Spain, we have something we call Trabajo de Recerca, which is a research work they have to do by the end of their compulsory education, and they started sharing, can you fill in this for me, can you do this for me? So it was like, and in English,
right,
which is amazing. Yeah.
right. Good. Thank you so much for sharing.
All right. Yes,
I...
Elisa, go ahead.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Ikram also.
No, go, Elisa, go.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Very interesting. And I wanted to ask you whether WhatsApp, when they used WhatsApp, were they trained using WhatsApp, or just free to use it as they felt the need? Yeah,
no, they were not trained, because like Marni, right? Like Marni said, here in Spain, WhatsApp, it's like the app. Everybody uses WhatsApp. Everybody. You would be amazed. We use WhatsApp for absolutely everything, right? And they don't need, actually, the pre-questionnaire 2019, we asked students, okay, what are the apps you know? And we provided them with a list of apps. Tell me which ones you know. Which one would you be more likely to or more happy to use if it were in the classroom? And they all of them, 100% of them said WhatsApp, because they know how to use it.
Mhm.
So the only thing we did was setting some rules, like, for example, be respectful, do not disturb people during the weekend, you know, but more like netiquette rather than teaching how WhatsApp works, because they use WhatsApp on daily basis.
Yeah, that is true. That, well, this is the same in Italy, of course, but I mean for learning reasons, you know. So maybe it's different, or I don't know.
No, because the idea is precisely to find out whether this natural use of WhatsApp can help them learn, you know, in a more informal
Yeah. Ah, sorry, Dunya. And you told them, did you tell them to talk in English all the time?
No,
Or
no.
They
No.
were free to they were free to use Spanish as well, or Catalan.
Yes, yeah, yeah. Well, more Spanish, but yeah, because I think translanguaging here could be very, very useful. So there are messages like, teacher, no te oigo. And I allow that. Eventually, naturally, because I always answered in English, right? And eventually, naturally, they started speaking in English and writing everything in English. So I wanted it to go to see how it went naturally.
And were they your students, or?
Yes, yes, yes.
Ah,
Yes.
okay.
Yeah. That's DBR is about the researcher. Most of the times is also the teacher. Yes. Yeah. So I am in the WhatsApp group.
Okay, Ikram, you had a question?
Actually, I was gonna ask a question, and then Moroni asked a similar question. So I was going to ask about how did you ensure that your students were engaged with WhatsApp? Because similarly, I have a similar topic that, like, I need to assign assignments to students, or teachers need to assign assignments to students, and the benefit of Kahoot is that it can monitor the students, you know, log in and log out of the app. They can give you the time they spent doing the assignments, that it can, and so on and so forth. So I was like, how could she, you know, ensure that they were engaged? But again, you said it was voluntary and they didn't feel like it was a task. So
Yeah.
that was actually really interesting, as well as but again, you mentioned that they were your students. So did you think that that affected, for example, their engagement? So they would be like, you know, maybe because she's our teacher, we'll engage with her more. If it was a stranger, for example, or another teacher, they would be, no, never mind.
No. Actually, the first 2019, 2020, there were more students. There were 3 different groups. I was one of them, and then 2 other teachers. And it was exactly the same. The student who did not want to participate did not participate at all.
Yeah.
And the one who wanted to, and sometimes they just, some tasks, for example, after a task, I'm just remembering one of the tasks nobody did, and you know, the questionnaire, it's, did you do the task? Yes, no. And all of them said no, of course. And then why? And most of them said, I remember it was shocking because they said, I did not remember. So they're pretty honest, you know, and that's, I don't think that influence, because they were honest. If they didn't want to do it, they just said, I didn't want to do it. And that's it.
They weren't marked upon these tasks. So yeah. That's
the idea, that they don't, I mean, we don't want them to feel constrained, or they don't want them to feel it's more homework, you know.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah. So I'd just like to ask, I know we're running out of time here, but I do have a couple of questions. The first one was, you mentioned the unique features of WhatsApp.
Yeah.
And I'm just wondering, because elsewhere, some of the presentations you've given, you've referred to MIM in general. And I'm just wondering if you've thought about how much you can generalize from WhatsApp use to instant messages in general, or instant messaging platforms in general, because they all kind of have unique platforms. Students use them more or less. They use them for different purposes. So I'm wondering, are you confident that you'll be, or do you plan to generalize about instant messaging platforms in general?
Not yet. Not really. No, at the very beginning, I did a study. I compared WhatsApp with Telegram, with WeChat, with Instagram, you know, but they're changing mostly. It's like crazy. So I actually, to be honest, it was difficult to keep up with the changes. So as students decided that they wanted to use WhatsApp, I thought, great, WhatsApp.
Okay. Yep. And I mean, it may be in the end that you just talk about WhatsApp rather than yes. And the second question was, it seems that if and when you produce results that demonstrate that WhatsApp can be a valuable tool, the next step is in your PhD will be the recommendations you need to make. And it would indicate that you'll be making recommendations to the, I don't know, Spanish Ministry of Education that WhatsApp should become part of their curriculum in some way. How much resistance do you expect from people if you try to implement this in a local or regional or national level?
A lot.
I expect so as well, yes.
A lot, yes, because, for example, and this is something personal, right? But my children are both teenagers, right? And recently their school sent an email saying, we have a new no smartphone, no mobile phone in school allowed. So I expect a lot of, of reluctancy, yes.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, I think we're going to move on. Before we move on to the last presentation, I have to give potentially an apology, because I may have to leave before this is over, or at least before we get to the questions and answers, because I have a student who I should be meeting in around 15 or 20 minutes. But hopefully they're late, and then I can stick around until the end. So I'd like to introduce Elisa Moroni, who is going to give the last but by no means least presentation on computer-mediated collaborative learning to work on Russian impersonal sentences. Elisa, please go ahead.
To disactivate, okay. Yeah, can you see the presentation?
Yes, it's just loading. Okay, yeah, just give me a second to make a screenshot as well. Yeah. But you can start. Go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm Elisa Moroni, and I'm doing a PhD in Barcelona at the Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. Yes, I wanted to say, sorry, before I start, that just yesterday that I have my seminario permanente segundo año for the doctoral students, that they told me to change the name I put on the presentation, because I always put Autonomous University of Barcelona, but they said that it's not correct. So the correct name is Universitat Autònoma de Barcelona. So as to, informal context, it should appear like that. So thank you. So and I'm my supervisor is Ina Kozlova-Mikurova, and also at the moment I'm currently studying in Innsbruck at Innsbruck University, Universitat Innsbruck, and I'm an Erasmus plus student here. And my second supervisor, my second tutor, director is Eva Hirzinger-Unterreiner. So the topic of my dissertation, the provisional title is Learning Russian in Personal Sentences, Computer Mediated Collaborative Writing in the Foreign Language Classroom. So I will talk about the main aim of my research, the background and theoretical framework, my methodology, and limitations and benefits of my study. So what about my research aim? So my main aim is to explore the relationship between computer-mediated collaborative writing used as a pedagogical tool for the learning of L2 Russian grammar, specifically foreign language, Russian as a foreign language. And I will examine specific structures, Russian impersonal sentences. Just to say, just to give an overview of the background of my theoretical framework. So I'm dealing with different areas of research. So second language acquisition and applied linguistics, TBLT, so task-based language teaching, and Russian linguistics and syntax. So as to say, Russian impersonal sentences. I chose this specific topic of Russian syntax since these are really a salient part of Russian grammar and syntax, and they are a highly communicative part of the Russian syntax. So extensively used in oral and written conversation in everyday Russian by L2 and L1 speakers. And let's start from the beginning. So Russian language is really as really a complex system, a highly inflectional and morphosyntactic system, and as different scholars, Russian, but not only Russian, have stated the acquisition of the Russian system can be really difficult for learners whose L1 does not have cases, as is the case of, for example, Catalan, Italian, and Spanish, because I'm dealing with this audience, I mean, this public, these students, Catalan, Spanish, and Italian students specifically. So why did I choose Russian impersonal sentences? First of all, as I said, because these are really, parts of the syntax that is highly used in everyday conversation, and also because these are used to express feelings. So these are used to express feelings, psychological and physical conditions, and also these are used to talk about health. I forgot to tell you that there is really a large amount of Russian impersonal sentences, and they've been thoroughly investigated and categorized by Russian scholars, by Russian linguists, and not only Russian. But I decided to focus specifically on these target structures that express feelings and emotions and health issues. Because in my teaching experience, before I mentioned that I am a teacher of Russian, I'm Italian, but I studied Russian, of course, at university. I lived in Russia, and I studied in Russia, and I have been teaching Russian for 10 years now at the secondary school in Italy, and now I'm in academic leave at the University of Barcelona for this PhD. These structures, and I often noticed in my experience that my students had some difficulties, problems in using these structures. So these structures are marked by predicative adverbs in general, and they do not have a nominative subject, but in general they have a dative or accusative subject, and they are marked by neutral forms of the short form adjective, or sometimes by the neutral form of a verb. And so, as I said, they are these specific structures that I choose for my experiment are used to talk about health issues. So health, of course, and I am dealing with A2, B1 level of proficiency. So health, of course, is included in the companion of the European languages. and as a topic, and also as a relevant topic, and also in the test for Russian as a foreign language. Let's talk about collaborative writing now. So I choose to work with collaborative writing since to my knowledge, at least in my specific experience as a teacher, and also talking with my supervisor, she's Russian and she's teaching Russian at the Universitat Autónoma de Barcelona, and also with the teachers, professor in Italy at university, and not only at university, at schools. I have this impression that collaborative writing has not been used as much as it could. So, and it's a topic that it interests me a lot. And also, what is collaborative writing? Collaborative writing has been defined as a joint written text, so a text that is written collaboratively by two or more writers, that they co-revise, they negotiate meaning to co-construct a text collaboratively. So collaborative writing has been said to be by scholars on this topic to promote peer interaction and scaffolding in the social cultural theory of mind, as Piyumi said before, so by Vygotsky. And so it is conducive to language learning. And because it allows the learners to see, to notice their gaps in their knowledge, in their linguistic knowledge, so to overcome these gaps, and in the zone of, oh my God, now I don't remember the name of development. Proximal development, yeah, sorry. And so, yeah, and collaborative writing, also scholars have shown that in their studies that collaborative writing has the potential to draw attention to form, although it is a meaning-oriented activity. So this is really important because it's a task-oriented activity. So let's talk about the dictogloss. As I said before, I choose to work with this kind of task. It's really, I found lots of interesting studies and articles on the dictogloss, but of course, all of these studies have been done with English as a foreign language or a second language, or other languages, Spanish, for example, German, but not Russian, to my knowledge, at least. And so the dictogloss task has been defined and described by Wainwright in 1990. So it should have specific stages. This is, as Piyumi said, it is a short text that is read aloud by the instructor, and the students are just listening to the text, and then they have to, jot down the second listening, they jot down words or phrases, and then the third stage, they have to reconstruct this text together in pairs or groups, mini groups. And but they don't have to rewrite the text exactly as they listen to it, but they have to write their own version of the text, so to reconstruct the content of the text. So the dictogloss has been defined by Ellis as a focus task because it is seeded by, in general, it is a text that is seeded with the targeted structures. And so it has also been defined as a structure-based production task because it is really a task where different skills are integrated and implemented, for example, listening, speaking, and writing, and also reading, of course. So why computer-mediated collaborative writing? First of all, because of course it's something that it's more and more popular in academic and not only, also in everyday situations and also professional situations. So learners, and also as the Common European Framework for Languages already indicates now, the last version, oral interaction and also written interaction online has to be implemented, because learners have to be able to interact online, so in an online environment. And so what is computer-mediated collaborative writing? Specifically is a technology-based collaborative writing text. So a single text which is produced online by writers, by learners, in collaboration. So they in pairs or in mini groups. Yes, I already said that. So, and moreover, why this really interests me, because a few studies, to my knowledge, have examined learners' attention to form in computer-mediated collaborative writing tasks. And also, it might be worth exploring this topic, so computer-mediated collaborative writing, as a site to draw learners' attention to form, while also focusing on meaning, and also in implementing a dictogloss, because to my knowledge, dictogloss tasks have been researched in collaborative writing, face-to-face interaction, but online, to my knowledge, I mean, I don't really know studies on dictogloss online, and especially on Russian, of course. So these are my research questions. So I have two main research questions, but three sub-questions to the first one. So, do computer-mediated writing activities elicit the production of the target structures? Which impersonal sentences of those presented in the dictogloss are reproduced by the learners? Which impersonal structures do learners produce in creative writing? Is there an enhancement in the use of the target structures in terms of linguistic accuracy? And is there an increase, sorry, I don't see okay, any difference in the use of these structures between learners who work individually, the control group, and study subjects who work in pairs, the experimental group? I'm sorry. Okay, so my methodology. So this will be a quasi-experimental study of about 8 to 10 hours, and my participants, my sample, will consist of probably 60 to 70 learners, of A2, B1 level of Russian, taken from 2 or 3 Italian and 1 Spanish university, maybe 2 Spanish universities, I don't know yet. And my design will be based on a pre-post test design with an intervention on computer-mediated collaborative writing. So the procedure will consist of a pre-test, then a pre-task, then two dictogloss tasks, 2 creative writing tasks, and then a post-test after 2 or 3 weeks, and then a delayed post-test after 1 month. So this will be basically the structure of the task. So the pre-test should consist of 3 main tasks. So a vocabulary knowledge scale, so to test the knowledge of the vocabulary used in the dictogloss. Then fill in the gaps, so to see whether the students already know how to use the structures and recognize the structures. And then a short written production. It should be an authentic task, so on rules. And then a pre-task, and this should be 2 listening comprehension tasks containing the targeted structures that should, allow me to see whether students can perform a listening comprehension task, because of course the dictogloss contains a listening comprehension too. So, and then a pre-task modeling of the dictogloss and a pre-task modeling of collaborative writing online. And this is really something that I'm struggling with. And then I don't know, I haven't found any model, any example in literature showing how to train students on how to use how to interact and how to engage in a dictogloss task, and also in the collaborative writing online. And I think it's really important in my case, because I think, as I said before, my students, probably the students I will deal with, probably probably, of course, I'm not sure of that, but about that, but probably they haven't really used collaborative writing, maybe online, and also the dictogloss in Russian. So the third stage, the dictogloss. So I will do a training dictogloss task similar to the experimental task, and the experimental dictogloss task will be an email on health issues, and I created myself this task because Weinreeb says that literature says that you can use a text that you find in literature, in textbooks, but an authentic text. But of course, it's really, really difficult to find such a text with these specific structures. So I had to construct it myself. And then creative writing tasks, as I said, it could be a blog entry, for example, and the other one, a brochure for uni webpage. So instruction how to behave in case of health issues in Russian-speaking countries. That should, of course, be authentic task in able to let the learners use these structures. So it's really tricky and difficult to design these kind of tasks. So the pre-test and post-test will be submitted individually, and we have a control group working individually and experimental group working collaboratively, and then comparing the two. And so all the entire experiment will be carried out online. And also, this is also difficult because I have to use a synchronous mode and asynchronous mode. So Zoom probably, and Google Docs or Wiki for the asynchronous part. And then I should carry out a pilot test, possibly in the end of May at Verona University in Italy. So I hope to be able to design all these tasks, and it's really difficult because I'm really in this stage of designing the tasks. And so this is just an example, but I go on because, so the data analysis, for the data analysis, I will use quantitative and qualitative measures, quantitative measure to count the structures in the written production, so the individual and collaborative groups, and then a qualitative content analysis using Atlas software, so to code the structures, so the errors or correct or incorrect structures. And then I will measure accuracy in pre-post tests, so how grammatical correctness has increased, and the range and the frequency of the structures. And then I will compare the use of the structures between the control and experimental groups. And of course, I will have to do a statistical analysis of data. So this is just the dictogloss I have created myself. This is in Russian, of course, and in bold, you see the structure. So all the structures that I inserted. And this is in English, but of course, maybe you don't have so this is just an email. Just to tell you the context, it's an email about, from a friend to a Russian friend, from an Italian to a Russian friend, and she's telling her friend the difficult period she had during the COVID pandemic. So how her sister and brothers got sick and how they had to deal with all these issues. So this is just some examples of how to code the structures in Atlas software. So which might be the limitations of my study. So this would be I would have a convenient sample because I will have access to intact classes at universities. So I want to have a randomization of the samples of the groups. Then I won't be able to do a longitudinal study because of time constraints. So this might lead to mixed findings or controversial findings, probably. And my learners might focus on other structures rather than their target structure. So this is also possible because this is something that in literature has been mentioned. But what might be the potential benefits of my study? So, of course, for Russian as a foreign language, but also for applied linguistics and specifically for computer-mediated collaborative writing, because the majority of studies, as I said, to my knowledge, have been done with other language, such as, for example, English, German, Spanish, French, but not on Russian. So there is a really paucity of studies to date on Russian as a foreign language and computer-mediated collaborative writing. So this might bring new insights on the topic and, of course, on Russian as a foreign language in Italy, Spain. Okay, so these are my references used in my presentation, and thank you for your attention and comments and feedback, of course, because I need it.
Thank you so much, Elisa, for the presentation. I think Martin might be a little bit tied up right now, so I'm going to allow for anybody else to ask questions, and then I've got a couple questions for you myself. So does anybody have any questions for Elisa? Okay. We'll go with my question then. So with the collaborative writing task, is there a scaffolding or levels that the participants would have to use? Like, how are they corresponding with each other in the collaborative writing?
Okay, yes, this is something that I'm struggling with, of course, because I need to think about that. And you mean how they should interact?
Right.
Yeah, I really, this is something that I really don't know how to handle, because of course I'm not focusing in this dissertation, because I really don't have time, because next year I have just 3 years, and then this is already my second year, and next year I will have to go back to school.
Right.
Then I will probably have to analyze my data when I'm already at school, and next year will be dedicated to the experiment, to the actual experiment. And now I should do the pilot study, and so for what concerns for example, the interaction, I won't really probably analyze the interaction for this PhD, although it might be really interesting, and it was something that I wanted to consider at the beginning of my research. But then, of course, I have so many things to consider, and I decided to focus only on the product and not on the process, as for example Piyumi.
Okay.
I'm just focusing on the product in this dissertation. But I will add a question on the pretest, an open question, very brief, where the students should tell their perceptions on this work, this intervention, and whether they found it useful or not, and whether they saw some maybe enhancement, I don't know, or some increase in the use of these structures or not.
Okay. And have they started the collaborative writing yet?
Sorry?
Like they've started the collaborative writing, or?
Not really. No, because I've not started the pilot.
That's not started. Okay.
Yeah, I'm just designing the task now.
Okay. And do you have a platform that you're going to use for the collaborative writing?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking on Zoom maybe, and the synchronous part, and then maybe Google Docs for the other part, for the or maybe Moodle, because each university, and this is also something to consider, because each university has its own platform for Moodle, for example. So I don't really know, and really I don't know how to structure the collaborative part of the work, and also the dictogloss, because I've studied, as I said, mainly face to face, but not online. So I don't really have a lot of examples on how to deal with the dictogloss online.
Okay. I'll just point you into one particular direction. There is what is called the Knowledge Building International Project. For short, it's KBIP, and Catalonia takes part in KBIP. And this is how to share for students for constructivist learning, how they can learn together and share and write together online. And usually they'll collaborate with another country. But if you go through the KBIP structure, which was put together by Scardamalia and Bereiter, I think it was almost 20 years ago is when they came up with this platform. I think it was from the University of Toronto. There's scaffolding, where they present the idea and then the students build upon. So if you have a look at the KBIP projects, which Catalonia still takes part in today, that might give you some ideas of how to put together the collaborative writing or how to structure it, because that's essentially how that platform was put together. So that's one idea, but you can also look at for collaborative writing through uni collaborators. When people do telecollaborations, there's a lot of writing tasks with telecollaborations or CMC.
Where? Sorry, I didn't understand the
Uni collaborators?
uni.
Uni, UNI, and then it's collaborators.
Mhm.
You could look, search for in uni collaborators or collaborators, any collaborative writing tasks.
Okay. Thank you.
And yeah, I'm not sure if anybody else has anything to add here. Or any other questions? No.
I think, I mean, I have come across certain research papers where they have used this collaborative writing using the Word, Microsoft Word. I cannot actually remember exactly what they are, but maybe going through like previous research, you will also be able to find out the certain method to do this. I think there was enough, maybe not on Dick Togler's activity, but you should be able to get some idea.
Yeah, I've read some of those articles, of course. Yeah, but I have to go through again some of those, of course. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. I'm going to share our screen now. So Elisa, if I can
Yeah,
have
of
you
course.
stop share, and I'll bring it back to the MULSIG presentation. Okay. So just a reminder, for those of you who may or may not be aware, that we do have the Eurocall conference in Reykjavik, Iceland. And for the MULSIG symposium, we have 3 presenters. So we've got Bruce Lander and Timothy Knight, who will be sharing their research on the phenomenon of machine translation in Japanese university setting, including a discussion about how machine translation such as DeepL can be used constructively to support language learning. Jamie Selwood from Hiroshima University will describe research revealing smartphones that have remained underexplored as a learning and teaching resource, and will highlight findings outlining beliefs and perceived barriers of smartphone usage in language learning courses from both the student and instructor perspectives in Japan. And Jack Burston from the University of Cyprus will offer an overview of research into MAL and advanced language learners, will report as a tendency to rely on tutorial style MAL, and will encourage MAL practitioners to focus on communicative MAL and further the pragmatic competence of advanced language learners. So this is what we have coming up at the Eurocall conference in Reykjavik in August. So this will be at the MULSIG symposium. And also as a reminder, if there are any new publications for 2022, 2023 that we should be adding to the MULSIG website, please make sure to send them to us and we can have those added in there. I think for 2023 right now, we just have the 2. And again, I would like to give a huge thank you for our presenters today. This webinar has been recorded. It will be on the MULSIG website and the YouTube channel. And of course, Martin is going to share some of the pictures that he's taken through our Twitter channel and other social media. And you will all be receiving your certificates, if not today, by tomorrow. So again, thank you so much for your participation in this. And if you are attending the Eurocall this summer, we're excited to see you there.
Well, thank you.
Marnie, sorry, can I ask you something?
Yes, absolutely.
Is it still possible to attend a conference or to present something there? Because I didn't know about the conference and I just knew it maybe these days. Yeah.
The deadline for presentations has passed, but you could attend as a participant.
Yes.
So I think they put the presentations, you have to submit, I think, in December, January-ish for the presentation. And then they accept, I think, around March, April is when you get the acceptance on that. But if you would like to attend the conference in Reykjavik as just as a participant, you're more than welcome to attend.
Thank you.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, everybody. And we look forward to seeing you at future events.
Thank you so much, Mani.
Okay.
Thank you so
Bye.
much for the comments, everyone. Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.